right, well, welcome to Digging Deeper, episode 100 something. We've got Dawson on the podcast today, making his first podcast debut. Let's go. If you don't know, Dawson has at this point fully taken over editing all of Digging Deeper.
Yeah.
So as you listen and as you are watching on YouTube, Dawson is the man behind the cameras, behind making these microphones sound good, behind making sure it gets on YouTube, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, iTunes. Like, is iTunes real? I don't know. I feel like
Apple Music
iTunes
now.
is irrelevant.
iTunes is what old people call it now.
Oh gosh, what is an old person, Dawson?
Oh man,
at what age do you become old? Do you think I'm old?
No.
Okay. Because they were just a couple years apart.
I feel like now, like, people are calling, like, people who are 32 old. And it's like, once you're 32, you're old, your life's done. I'm like, I just hope not.
We should probably start this over. I'm just kidding. We'll leave it. It's good. It's off the cuff. It's raw. It's real. And that's what we're about here for Digging Deeper is just, telling it like it is and talking about, Sunday mornings, services, giving a peek into just what happens behind the scenes. And today we're going to dig deeper into digging deeper. So this past weekend, we had a really big announcement for our church, lead pastor announcement. And we are actually going to talk to Bobby next week. I believe he's going to be on Digging Deeper. He's going to be here to actually preach this weekend. Him and his wife Megan and their entire family are going to be here. And then, we're going to get to do everything with them next week. So we actually wanted to kind of just take a little bit of time to do something a little bit different today. And like I said, dig deeper into digging deeper. I don't know what we're going to call this, like the editor's edition or something like that.
Digging Deeper-ception.
Let's go. I like that.
There we go. Now for Bobby, is it going to be Bobby and Megan, or is it just going to be Bobby on the podcast?
I'm not sure. We'll ask him. We'll see what he wants to do. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
It will be cool. I'm excited. It's kind of crazy that all happened. But man, you've been here, seen a lot of changes. This is not your first lead pastor change that you've seen here a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the behind the scenes of Digging Deeper, what goes into all of it, the editing process, all that kind of stuff. But first, I just want to take some time to introduce Dawson a little bit and hear a little bit about who you are, what your history is. Talk about, like, you're on staff here now at Rise City, but before that, you've been an attender of Rise City. You were at Harvest before. Like, give us the spiel. Like, how did you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, so my family first started going here. I was about maybe 5 or 6. We attended Harvest for a while, and then we went through some changes. David Daly came on staff at Harvest, and then David Daly actually, through real estate, connected with Brandon, and then later on, through God, just was able to talk about Rise City having the building, merging the two churches together, which was that was terrifying for a lot of people at Harvest, because it was definitely an older, more closely knit congregation of people, and so it felt like just interjecting people into a family, so to speak. And
that had to be wild.
Yeah, it was new youth pastor, new people in our youth group, and our youth group was tiny, but then it went from tiny to super tiny, because all my friends were leaving around me. People were moving to Idaho like crazy, and it was
Idaho, man.
I freaking hate Idaho. It keeps taking all the good people. If you're watching this and you're from Idaho, I still love you.
Yes, yeah, we are happy for you.
Yes, we are happy for you.
They made it out.
they made it out. But yeah, it was a hard transition going to Rise, but most good things are really hard. God's not going to make a good thing come really easy. And so I feel like there's a lot of growth that I got to see in people that I went to youth group with. There was a lot of growth in how our church was ran and everything like that. And just getting to see familiar faces, Pastor Mike is still here. I still call him Pastor Mike because that's what I've been calling him since I was 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things did change, but like all the good things about Harvest were still here. And then I was in youth group, but at Harvest, my youth pastor, Becky Lang, she actually was giving free guitar lessons as long as, well, they weren't free. They were free if you played on the youth worship team.
That's so smart.
Yes.
What a good business plan.
That is a good business plan. I think I might try to steal that. So if you're a youth student out there and you want to learn how to play guitar.
Yeah, because digging deeper is not the only thing that you do here as part of your staff responsibility.
Yes, now I actually came full circle. The person who taught me how to do youth worship, now I am doing youth worship here at Rise. I almost said here at Harvest.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? No, that's really cool. It's awesome. It's been 9 months now, 10 months, almost.
Since last
it's
October,
like
September. Yeah, October.
Yeah. Man, almost a year, dude.
Yeah, because I came back from Folsom at
coming
September.
Up. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, and so did you know how to do any of like this editing or digging deeper or like podcast stuff, like cameras, microphones? Did you know how to do any of that?
No, I didn't even know how to turn the camera on.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
And now 9 months later, you've taken over all of it. So you and I have both had our hands in editing Digging Deeper, or being a part of like the producing of the show.
Yeah.
Jean was the one who really pioneered it. He was the one who like actually envisioned the whole space. And usually we have a sign right back here that actually says Digging Deeper, but we're running out of paper and we didn't want to.
We don't want to cut it.
We don't want to cut it. So that's a little behind the scenes.
Because Digging Deeper didn't even start out as like it would be a podcast and it was going to be called Digging Deeper. It was like a one-off thing for a message, right?
Yeah. And it started off where it was just kind of like some cell phone videos of, I believe it was probably Brandon or whoever was preaching that Sunday, was just doing like 5 or 10 minute extra devos to send out on social media, kind of during the COVID era, I believe. And then it's actually when I came here, which is two and a half years ago, that the first week I was here was the first week that we did it like this, where it's like, all right, we're going to make this a thing. We're going to do this every week. We're going to have a podcast and we're actually going to pour some energy into it. So Jean really kind of got this space ready to go. And what you're seeing today is all, it was his brainchild. Yeah. And then it's kind of just gotten morphed here and there as time has gone. And, we've got some exciting ideas for what it could be here in the future, but we really wanted to give you guys, our listeners, a chance to just hear a little bit about what goes into it every week.
Yeah.
And I was actually talking to someone, I'm going to name drop him. I think he'll be okay with me saying this. Ryan Phillips. I was talking to him on 4th of July, and he said that he's listened to every single Digging Deeper episode.
Oh my gosh.
Every single one.
Every single one.
Yeah. Now he runs a lot and has a lot of time where he's listening to these podcasts, but still, like, that's commitment. And I know he's not the only one. I know there's a lot of people who are faithfully listening to all of this. And we just wanted to give our listeners just a chance to hear a little bit about like the actual energy that does need to go into this. Cause it's not just something that we like hit record and upload it and it's just like an easy thing. Like,
I wish it was
you are a staff member as part of Rise City that we you are devoting every Monday to this. Like, what does it look like from like when you walk in on a Monday morning and you like find out who the guests are and all that? Like, what does it look like start to finish, producing it, filming it, editing it, uploading it, distributing it everywhere? Like, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I come in Monday mornings, get everything set, figure out how many people we're going to have on the podcast, figure out where they're going to sit, who's going to sit where. That way I could figure out, oh, like you're being interviewed over here. Like we're going to have the side camera, which also we have 2 cameras. You don't just have the one shot. You have 2 cameras and then just pressing little buttons.
Which actually makes it a lot more complicated than if it was just one.
It does. If it was just one camera, I would just put like just one filter over everything and then just press export and then call it a day. But so figure out how many people are on it, figure out how many mics I need, set up the chairs, set up the mics, then adjust the cameras if I need to. And then we sit there, we film everything. Takes around 30 to sometimes sometimes Pete gets really into it and it becomes almost an hour long, which is cool. It makes for a good podcast because it's always good conversation.
Yeah.
But then I put it onto the computer, and then I put it into fast forward as I'm editing it, make it a little bit quicker while I'm switching through the camera. So don't really hear anybody's voices too much. Like you can hear what they're saying, but it's just like,
yep.
And then I get that exported. That takes about like 15, 20 minutes. And then I put it on all the platforms that we have. And then by that time, my 7 to 8 hour day is done.
Yeah. The day goes by pretty quickly when you're doing this. And the weeks that you're gone, I'll do it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot how long this actually takes. There's no way to make it go faster.
There's no way to make it go faster.
It's always going to take time to set it up. It's always going to take time to film it. And then just the processing of computers, it just takes time.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that we're devoted to as a church. And I think a lot of people get a lot of really great benefit from getting to hear what is said and what's talked about. And sometimes it really is a digging deeper into the message.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even a digging deeper into something that had nothing to do with the message, but like the Holy Spirit was on that conversation for somebody to listen to. And we actually have like stories about that, and I've heard stuff like that. And I'm curious. I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question, but I'm curious, like, how has being the one behind the camera, being a part of all of these conversations and editing it, like, how has it been edifying to you? Like, have you taken anything away from like just sitting behind the camera and listening, soaking in all these conversations? Maybe if there's like one or two things that like stick out.
Yeah. I remember it was last week. I actually work 2 jobs. I do window cleaning. The guy here, Andy Owens. If you're listening, Andy, love you, bro. But he was on the podcast last week, and just kind of getting to like listen to their hearts, him and Pete, just not only about the message, but like talking about like life change and seeing like the true care that Pete had for Andy, and like seeing like how emotionally they were like both invested into that conversation, and into like, and how emotionally invested and spiritually invested Pete was into the person that Andy was. It like you really get to see like how people's different character interacts with each other, and just like seeing like intentionality like that people have is like super good to just like sit there and absorb that and like learn from like people who are wiser than you, like their intentionality, like with conversation, how they interact with people and how they love people. I feel like that's like the biggest thing that I've been able to like just absorb and grow in from just even sitting there listening to it.
Yeah. And dude, the time that you've been doing it has been a really big pivotal time in our church where character truly shows. And you've probably seen different people at different times under different pressures, you know, like I do, like you mentioned, Pete, like I think of him moving into an interim lead pastor role and kind of walking through that and working through that, but on digging deeper. And then, you know, like Mariah taking all of these new steps of leadership as she's been working through a lot of the transition stuff. And you've gotten to hear from Anthony, who's our student pastor, and just to really like dive into things. And then we have all of our special guests. You were editing the podcast while Brandon was going through his big transition.
Yeah.
And you were filming some of those really big pivotal moments where they're talking about that transition and the exit. And you've gotten to film a lot of laughs, but you've also gotten to film a lot of tears. And, you know, like digging deeper is such a it's an interesting thing. It's not just an informative thing. It's like this is us talking about what's really happening, and
it's raw,
trying to just, be processing life as pastors or as staff, or even with a lot of our guests, just people that are wanting to live for the Lord. And you've gotten to see the whole gamut of that.
Yeah. Really cool. I got to watch and edit the podcast for Brandon's announcement that he's leaving, for his podcast where we talked about like all the memorabilia for his final podcast, and then now coming up, it's going to be Bobby's intro one.
Yeah.
Do
you have a favorite Digging Deeper episode that comes to your mind?
One of my favorites is probably the one that we did with Robert and Anthony a while back. It was like probably the third one that those two have ever done together. It was just so funny. We probably had to we had to do a different take at least once because they just say things that they're funny, but they might be a little bit too funny for Digging Deeper.
That was...
It's like we are trying to be like mildly serious.
Yeah.
But yeah, also one of my favorite parts is just like making just like I also do like the social clips for Digging Deeper in the messages, but also find little snippets and bloopers and stuff and just create those clips and put them on the computer just for us to share around in the office.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like all the serious ones that we post. And then there's all the ones that Dawson will send to me. And it's called like Pete being Pete or like Anthony blooper. It's very funny.
They're so funny. At least I can enjoy like those like little moments. Just like have some fun while I'm in here for 8 hours, just cooped up.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to ask too, maybe some of this might be subject to change, with the new lead pastor coming in, but are there any ideas that maybe you have for Digging Deeper moving forward? And like, is there anything that like you get pumped about, excited about, whether that's different guests that might be on the podcast or like the way that the podcast looks or anything that you might want to change up? I mean, now that you've been doing it for a long time, like not necessarily maintaining what was already done, but like you learned it all, you've gotten used to all of it. Like, what does it look like to take it into your own hands? Is there anything that you're like excited about?
Yeah, for sure. A couple things. One is workshopping the room in here a little bit. It kind of can feel like mildly corporate-y sometimes. When we have the sign out, it's not really as much. It's kind of just like it feels like a church podcast. It feels super chill. It feels like relaxed. But kind of just doing something that feels a little bit more relaxed, feels like a very conversational room, like something with like a small circle table in the middle, 2 chairs, just like changing up the room a little bit, like maybe just brightening up, making it a little bit more interesting to look at. I know a lot of people don't even see it, which is crazy. A lot of people are just
if you don't know, we do video this and it's on YouTube as well.
Yeah, it's just in the office it's in Ben's office, just tucked away in a little corner with the walls painted black.
Said, where does this actually happen? Because a lot of people will walk in here and they're like, oh, I recognize that.
They might think that we just have some random closet that we filmed this in.
Nope.
But it's actually in the offices. Yeah. But just kind of changing up the room, brightening it up a little bit, making it feel like a little bit more like kind of like a living room, like kind of just like where conversations happen.
Yeah.
Make it feel more natural. And then also, I don't think I've talked about this with you, but I've talked about it with Anthony about how we do like a student takeover week. I think it would be cool to do a student takeover for the podcast.
Oh, that would be cool.
Probably for the same week that we do student takeover, but just having students on in general, maybe someday having a student podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know how many students out there actually listen to podcasts or even listen to this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, definitely not on iTunes.
Definitely
on Apple Music, maybe.
Not on iTunes,
Podcasts.
maybe.
Yeah.
Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, yeah.
That would be very cool, actually. I hadn't thought about that, really. That could be cool to get some like student voices to weigh in on some of the topics. I feel like a lot of times we do hear from whether it's staff members or pastors, and it can come with a different perspective sometime.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm excited about, we've kind of done it a little bit more recently, just kind of throughout this process, is we've had a little bit more guests. It's kind of opened up like who is actually here coming to be a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
It started out really being like pastors and staff. And I like the idea of it starting to open up a little bit. Sometimes we talk about topics that, to be honest, like we have to almost like stretch ourselves to figure out like, how can we talk about this? Because we're not truly an expert in this, but there are people in our church who sometimes are experts on family dynamics or on this issue or this issue. And I think there's some intentionality moving forward that we could have to bring on some extra voices to be a part of this.
Yeah, because now at this point we've had like Jim Nichols, Jen Peterson, we've had Annie Owens. Who are some other names?
The Porrases were on one time.
Yes, they were
talking about prayer.
I remember listening to that one driving up to Forest Home.
Yep, that was really cool. Prayer and just the Holy Spirit, which was really cool. I'm kind of blanking now, but if you go through our catalog, you can see all of these different people, because we do put their names like in the descriptions and everything. I know there's some people, like you mentioned Jim Nichols. He's like, I'm going to compete with Andy and we're going to see how many times we can get on the podcast. I love that.
Jim Nichols has been on what, twice now?
I know at least twice. I don't want to say the wrong number.
Yeah.
It might be 3. It might be, it's probably 2, but, yeah, that's something that I get pretty excited about, just for the future. But, yeah, man, I don't know if there's a whole lot extra to talk about, on this podcast. This is definitely a special edition kind of podcast. Just really painting the picture for, the effort that really does go into this, and not just the effort, but, a face and a name behind the effort. Like Dawson, we as a church, and I think as listeners, are so thankful for just the work that you do day in and day out to do this every single week.
Yeah.
And I've been on that side of editing it too. And there's a lot of times where, you can come in and be like, oh man, it's kind of, the same thing that I did last week, but it's such a new conversation every week. There's always something new to talk about. There's always some new sermon that we're kind of dissecting. And there's always, I truly believe, like something new that the Holy Spirit wants to communicate, even through our conversations, even through a podcast and a video. Like you just never know what God's going to do. And it's really important work, and really, really thankful for you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's cool to come like full circle, because I used to just like be a member of the congregation and then listening to the podcast, and now I'm on staff and I get to edit the podcast. But what's cool about editing it is like I still get to listen to it every week. In fact, I get to listen to more than when I listened to it before.
And now you're on the podcast.
Yeah. Now it's really come full circle. And now
I could edit this one if it's weird for you. No, we'll have you edit it.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
That's funny. But yeah, man, really, really thankful for you again. Next week, we are going to get to meet our new lead pastor as part of the podcast. So that's really exciting too. But man, I hope you've enjoyed this. You can, if you have any questions or want to learn more even about what goes into the editing or anything, like, we love talking that kind of stuff, nerd out on Premiere Pro and the audio editing. And, there's people in our church that do podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And they've asked me like, what settings do you use and all that. Love talking about that. Maybe one day you'll start your own podcast too. We'll see.
That'd be pretty sick.
So lots of exciting stuff there, but really just wanted to take an intentional whole episode to really just highlight you and just the work that you're doing. And, not only that, but just the care that we put into digging deeper every week. It's a really important part of our week here on staff. It was fun.
It was fun to talk about something that I'm very passionate about. Very like I put a lot of like care and attention to.
For sure. Well, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Digging Deeper. Probably a record like short one actually, which is great.
It's probably a third of the length of Pete's normal ones.
Yes. Yeah. No less important though. And definitely good. Really. Really appreciate you guys listening, and come back next week for a really exciting podcast.
Yep. Can't wait.
All right. Bye.
See you.